Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful December the 2nd, 2019. Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, we're getting ready to go through some depression down here in the South. After this great, exciting weekend of college football, you wouldn't think that things could get any better, but we got the final week of the season coming with the conference championships.
Yeah, conference championships. It seems like every week is a conference championship or a playoff. I've been telling you, we need more than four teams. I think we've gotten like every week the last couple of weeks. It's been that way. It's all fair and love and war. A lot of good things happening. Some NBA basketball. I think the Clippers scored 150 points. That's a lot of points, especially on Washington. And then also, we have some news in college football. Some coaches deciding that they're going to step aside to a Big C. Even when you have success, sometimes you just need a different change of scene. And, of course, NFL football. If you saw the Ravens and the 49ers, that's defense in the rain. It was all fair love and war. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports podcast. You'll hear from our national sponsors on podcast and TV shows. You'll hear from Big C Sports. And we're also seen on Xfinity Comcast television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I want to make sure with this great holiday, and I hope people had a great Thanksgiving, Big C, we give out our National Suicide Hotline number. It's for military veterans, and it's also for civilians, but it's for people who need help, especially this time of year. Not everybody's happy when the holidays come, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's not, Charlton. It's a tough time for a lot of people when you're having to try to figure out where your next meal is or your next night of shelter, Charlton. And so many of our veterans have found themselves homeless in this great country, Charlton. When we think of a country with so many resources and trying to figure out things that should be done for others, Charlton, our veterans should always be in the forefront of everybody's mind. When we think about all these political infightings that are going on, Charlton, they're never addressing the needs of the great veterans of this country, which has driven so many of them to this horrific disease that's called suicide.
Yeah.
And we have to find a way, Charlton, in our political rivals and in everyday walk of life people, how to help out more veterans, Charlton. When we think about the homeless in this time of the year, the weather has dipped down into the freezing temperatures across most of this country, Charlton. And a lot of veterans, as well as just other American citizens, find themselves in this.
Yep.
And, a lot of them have gone that negative route of suicide, and the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there. Even if they don't have a phone, lend them your cell phone. Let them talk to somebody, address them to that line, Charlton, where they can have a friendly voice to listen to that may understand their problems and help them through that plight that they may be pondering.
Yeah.
So as we get through this holiday season, always think about the veterans who've made it safe for you to enjoy this holiday season in America, and find a way to help stem the suicide. We talk about fighting cancer. We talk about fighting drug addiction, Charlton. We have to find a way to stop suicide in America.
Yeah, I do believe that we can give a helping hand. 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday season. We're already in December. Today is December 2nd. And they had this thing called Black Friday when people stand outside of a store, Big C, sometime as early as 2 o'clock in the morning to go get the same toys they bought last year, Big C. How does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I believe I was asleep, Charlton, because I was in this hangover from all this food that I'd eaten. And I don't know if I could have waken up. But, people are in the mood to get great deals, Charlton, and figure the best deals would be the first in line. And it's become a bit of American tradition, Charlton, that people are gluttony just for anything.
Yeah, I was thinking that POTUS would also be standing in line for food and toys, Big C, but he was across the pond shaking hands to get away from the fake impeachment garbage going on in Washington. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the president, made a surprise visit to the troops over in Afghanistan.
It was a surprise.
It's nice that the commander-in-chief will make that John, Charlton, but the one thing that I found troubling in all of that is that you have to outdress the troops. Normally you should dress down to support those who are supporting our country, Charlton, to dress at least in some type of military attire. But don't go there trying to take photo ops to stand out in front of the troops.
Yeah, it's a way to say that nothing's going on in America to be concerned about. But it's all fair level war. I really do want to wish that people had a great, holiday season on this Monday. I still want to believe that the best Thanksgiving food is, of course, is great on Thanksgiving, Big C. But it's almost like the day or two after Thanksgiving that the seasoning really hits home. Do you enjoy leftovers as much as I do, or are yours gone on the first day, Big C?
Well, no, Charlton, leftovers is one of the things that resonate throughout the refrigerator. The problem is trying to figure out what's in what container, Charlton. One of these days I'm going to learn to use a Sharpie and write on the container what's inside and underneath the foil.
Yeah, I understand. I do the same thing. It's all fair level war. I do want to jump on, before we get into some college football, it came to my attention today that in the great Northwest, Chris Peterson, the University of Washington, will be stepping down from the Huskies head coach. And when you think about how great he's been, how successful he's been, it's amazing. But it's always about opportunities. And automatically on the West Coast, people are saying, wait a minute, are they calling for maybe Helton to leave USC or maybe, Kelly down at UCLA, who knows? But Chris Peterson, with his coaching pedigree, Big C, between Boise State and the University of Washington, he's 146 wins, only 38 losses between those two programs. He's been to 3 consecutive, after New Year's Day bowl games, Big C, 2 Pac-12 championships, and 1 in the college football bowl championship series. They lost to Alabama. Coach Peterson's won 79% of his games. He'll find a way to land on his feet, or maybe he just wants to get away like Urban Meyer did, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the majority of those losses came at the University of Washington. I think from what I heard about Coach Peterson is that he's burnt out on coaching football, is that he's just going to take an administration role there with the university. Yes, everybody was jumping, saying he was going to Southern California, but I don't think that's part of Coach Peterson's lifestyle. You think of where he came from, Boise, Idaho, a very laid-back, relaxed type of community, Charlton, and then he went to Seattle. Similar type of layout to Boise, but just a larger environment. He's not cut out for that L.A. lifestyle, Charlton. He's more of a quiet, subdued coach, and he says he wants more time with his family, and I think he'll stay in that administration role.
Yeah, they have a great program. The great Donnie James, I remember starting to watch Husky football back in the day, and he's come on and coached the same type of program up at Washington. So we wish him nothing but the best. Coaches also can have some burnout, but there was some great football over the weekend, Big C. I want to say congratulations to San Jose State. They beat Fresno State in what's called the Valley Bowl. Now, if you know California, San Jose State is in the heart of Silicon Valley. San Jose, South Bay area, San Francisco area, and then Fresno State, they're in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley, which is the largest agricultural belt in the United States of America, and some people say even in the world. It feeds a lot of people all over the world, Big C. So the Valley Bowl was about the high tech versus the farmers, and the high tech won this time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Maybe they outcrafted them in this game, Charlton, had a little more technology.
Yeah, it went right down to the wire. They were saying, what are those laser beams looking down at our playbook, Big C? That's what Fresno State was complaining about. But again, the Valley Bowl, I just thought that was amazing. The high tech part of the world meets the agricultural part of the world, and they actually celebrate their championship. So congratulations to San Jose State with a last-minute win. Number 1, Ohio State. And think about, they were number 2 just a couple of weeks ago, and they haven't played anybody that was ranked higher than them, but they moved up the polls. So Ohio State ranked number 1, 56-27 over number 10 ranked Michigan. Big C. J.K. Dobbins ran for 4 touchdowns. Justin Fields, the 4 touchdown passes for a school record 8th straight win in the series. The Buckeyes are now 12-0 and 9-0 in the Big Ten, and they had Michigan singing the blues. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Ohio State all year long has established themselves as one of the most dominant teams in college football, Charlton. And you think about the great job that Coach Ryan Day has done. He is 15-0 as the Buckeyes head coach. He started out as perfect, you know, thus far in his coaching tenure at Ohio State. And they dominated Michigan once again. This is a team that's solid from top to bottom. And you think about the point differential that they have on the season, Charlton, close to 500-point differential versus their opponent.
Well, some Ohio State fans, they were asking to fill in the blanks, and they said, who's got it better than us? And they said, Ohio State, Big C. It used to be nobody but the Buckeyes. Congratulations on another big win. Also, down south, last I checked, I was seeing LSU's number 2. They haven't lost a game, but they were dropped in the polls. I still think that people, whoever changes the voting on the team, they should have to say who they are, at least hold their hand up, Big C, so we can see who they are. LSU, number 2 in the country. They dominated Texas A&M, which really took it on the nose for the whole state of Texas. When you look at how dominant that high school programs are in Texas, we hear about the multi-million-dollar high school stadiums, and a state that lives like football is their religion down there. But when you look at their major programs, Texas and Texas A&M, even Houston, Rice, TCU, Baylor for the most part is doing okay this year. They've really been knocked around. 52-7, Joe Burrow, Patton, his Heisman Trophy resume with 352 yards, 3 touchdown passing. And the Tigers have their first unbeaten regular season since 2011, Big C. What's wrong with Texas, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not about what's wrong with Texas, Charlton. It's about the quality that has arrived in college football. When you think about Joe Burrow, he became the SEC's all-time single-season passing leader for yardage, Charlton. He broke Tim Couch's record from 1999 at the University of Kentucky. But when you look at LSU, they have a complete football team just like Ohio State. This is going to be one heck of a playoff series, Charlton, when it starts.
That's very amazing. So, but I do want to follow up because it was Fisher that got they lured him in from Florida State. I guess he was tired of the sunshine, Big C. He wanted to eat some more barbecue. They eat barbecue in Florida too. But when you look at, and I know people say don't blame the coach, he didn't make any plays. But when you give a guy $75 million and he's supposed to have them in a championship contention, it's one thing to say we lost to LSU, but when you lose 52-7, how do they justify not adjusting his salary, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at when you hire Coach Charlton, you got to look at where Texas A&M was in the polling. Texas A&M has never been a consistent 10-win team, Charlton, throughout their history. So it takes time to turn around the history of a program. It's like when you look at those West Coast programs out there at UCLA and USC.
Yeah.
You know, do you adjust those coaches' salary, Charlton, when they only win 4 to 6 games a season?
Well, that's a very good point, but nobody's making $75 million, and I think they let guys go for half of that salary, but it's all fair and love and war. Number 3, Clemson, a 38-3 win over South Carolina. Trevor Lawrence threw for 295 yards and 3 touchdowns. He led the Tigers to his 27th straight victory and second consecutive 12-0 regular season. This is a team that has not lost a game since 2017, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, back to that point about salaries, would you adjust Dabu Swinney's salary? Would you double it because he hasn't lost a game in 2 years? I mean, but Clemson right now is right on track, right on pace where they need to be. They're not going to have a problem in the ACC championship game, Charlton. This is one of the most dominant programs we've seen in college football over the last 5 years.
Think about Jimbo Fisher leaving in the ACC at Florida State, a perennial power, going to Texas A&M for $75 million. Dabu Swinney stays in the ACC and stays at Clemson, and his team hasn't lost and since Jimbo got out of the state of Florida, Big C. It's all amazing, though. I really love the way Clemson's playing football. And then them good old boys in Georgia, 52-7 over Georgia Tech. Jake Fromm threw 4 touchdown passes in Georgia. They cruised into the Southeast Conference Championship game. Big C, it was their biggest ever win over an in-state rival. That's not being very neighborly, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Georgia's trying to get ready for the SEC championship game, Charlton. They have the number 2 scoring defense in the country, and they proved that against the in-state rival in Georgia Tech. Quarterback Jacob Fromm played better in this game than he had in his last 3, Charlton. They seem to be on track for a great battle against LSU.
Yeah, you're supposed to be We hear about Southern hospitality. Somebody forgot to tell Georgia when it came to Georgia Tech, BC. And then one of the biggest rivals in all of sports is when you have the Alabama and Auburn game. And it seems like every year, when they win at Auburn anyway, when Auburn wins at home, it comes down to one big play. And for the most part, the last two times, those plays that have won the game for Auburn, they were 100 yards. The kickoff, I think it was a missed kick, or that was returned over 100 yards a couple of years ago. And then there was a pass on the goal line where the running back was going toward the goal line, and the ball was tipped at his back, and the linebacker ran it back 100 yards for the score. Number 16, Auburn. They knock off number 5, Alabama, 48-45. John Shiver scored an 11-yard run with 8 minutes left to put the number 16 Auburn Tigers ahead. And another failed field goal by Alabama in the Iron Bowl. It really wiped away the fifth-ranked Crimson Tide's playoff hopes. But I'm going to tell you, there's still not 5 teams in the country better than Alabama, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as you looked at that game, as many of the people around the country looked at that game, and you question where college football's state of mind is there any more exciting football than what you see played in the South, in the SEC? And is there any wonder why all the top recruits in the country want to come play in the SEC and the ACC? When you looked at that game from a fan's perspective, was there anything more electrifying on television on Sunday? This game came down to the last minute of the ball game, Charlton. Multiple big plays. You know, this game put up over 35 points in the second quarter alone. Back and forth. It was the highest scoring Iron Bowl in history.
Yeah.
And it was a game with so much on the line. The college football playoffs were on the line, Charlton. Rankings in the SEC. And so when you look back and look at the electrifyingness of this game, and it came down the last 2 times that Auburn and Alabama played, it's come down to a kick that was missed by Alabama. The last time they played, it was a kick 6, Charlton, where the field goal was returned 100 yards for the touchdown to propel Auburn to a victory. This time it came down to a missed 43-yard field goal that allowed Auburn once again to escape with a victory over top-ranked Alabama.
Yeah, there's a Buddhist chant called Nam Yoho Rinke Yo. It's how they align themselves with the earth and the spirits. A lot of spiritual things going on. But there's something about that chanting that goes on in those 2 arenas. Not only do you have the players on the field, but they have a lot of times when parents have played there and their kids go there and the whole community comes out for the game. It's not about Alabama getting beat by Auburn. I think they really lost because they didn't have Tua. That's my opinion. But they had so many other reasons that they could have won. Same with, you tip your hat to Auburn. It makes the Oregon loss look a little bit more palatable if you just go those 2 games. At the same time, I thought Nick Saban was right. It turned out that Auburn got the chance to get the extra field goal before halftime, when really they didn't have enough time on the clock, but they stopped it to review it. So that came from up top to review it. It just happened to be they were at Auburn. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was. You always talk about home cooking in certain arenas, Charlton.
Yep.
And, everything comes down to judgmental.
Yep.
But at the bottom line, at the end of the day, have you seen a game on the West Coast that was that exciting? I know there was a big game out on the West Coast, and there was Stanford and Notre Dame,
yep,
which used to be a huge rivalry game. In the South, games always stay huge rivalry games, packed houses. There were 88,000 frenzied people in Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, Alabama, Charlton. You weren't going to find a more electrifying atmosphere in any college campus across the country.
I thought it was a great theater down there for the good old boys down south. I hear they're still partying into the night, Big Z. Number 6, Utah, 45-15 over Colorado. Brian Kuthi scored 3 touchdowns, and Utah locked up a spot in the Pac-12 championship game for the 2nd consecutive season. And I'm a big Pac-12 opponent. I live out here, so I'm always trying to wag the tail of the Pac-12. So with Utah playing Oregon in the Pac-12 championship down at Levi Stadium, that stadium holds 68,000. If they can't get at least 55,000, and I know a lot of teams don't travel, it's the holidays, people don't have the money, they just got sort of spent their money on Black Friday and then Christmas. And then Utah have to travel about a 1,500-mile flight. Oregon have to go about 800 miles to the Bay Area. So you're probably not going to find a packed house, and they're saying it might rain. But if you don't turn out good for that, the Pac-12 champion make it as decided by a team from the Big 12, if they have a sellout crowd down south with Oklahoma and Baylor? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is a comparison of college football. When you look at the Pac-12 championship game, Charlton, at Levi Stadium that seats about 70,000 people, as you say, both of those teams are one state away. Oregon is one state up above California. Utah is basically a state and a half away from California. When you look at the SEC championship game that's going to be played in Alabama, 78,000-seat Mercedes-Benz Dome down in Atlanta. You're going to have LSU. LSU is 5 states away in Louisiana from Atlanta, from Georgia. And yet Georgia is local. But every year that they've had the SEC championship game, Charlton, in Georgia, it's been a complete sellout. We've seen the Big 12 championship game, Charlton, have full houses in Texas. You're going to have the Big 10 championship game in Indianapolis. Last time I checked, Wisconsin wasn't in Indiana, nor was Ohio.
Right.
That game will be a complete sellout. And so when you talk about recruits and trying to get the top recruits across the country and wanting them to be in your program and help build your program up, the conference championship game alone, Charlton, is a selling point for recruits, and especially the atmosphere we saw this last weekend down in Auburn Stadium, Charlton, with that flying crowd down there. And then if you compare it to the one that was in Stanford with Notre Dame is as big a traveling team as there is in the country.
Yeah.
And they couldn't fill up a 50,000-seat stadium there at Stanford. Probably had 30,000 people there, Charlton. So that Pac-12 championship game, Charlton, you won't see the upper bowl getting any camera time.
And that could really hurt the conference. And I've been a proponent for the last couple of years. You gotta fill your audience. And you gotta start having one of the home teams host the championship game. That's just my opinion. If not, it's gonna look really bad if you'd have half a capacity at a stadium celebrating your championship team. Number 7, Oklahoma 34. Number 21, Oklahoma State 16. Kennedy Brooks rushed for 160 yards and a touchdown. And he helped Oklahoma beat his in-state rival. Man, it was windy down there in Stillwater. Big C, your thoughts?
It was windy for Bedlam, Charlton, and a much-needed win by the University of Oklahoma. Got on track. Charlton had a double-digit win, something they haven't had in their last 3 games, and they're still in the hunt for the college football playoffs.
They are still in the hunt, Big C. Number 8, Florida, a 40-17 win over in-state rival Florida State. Kyle Trask threw 3 first-half touchdown passes, including 2 to Freddie Swain. And Florida hammered rival Florida State to end a 4-game home losing streak in that series. It's just a great series when you have in-state rivals. But, Florida State will be back. They just got to land on their feet again. But it's good to see Florida back. Big C, your thoughts?
One of the greatest things about the rivalries that you have in the state of Florida with so many prestigious universities, Charlton, is most of these kids grew up playing football with and against each other from Pop Warner through high school and now through college. And to have a lot of their college days in Charlton in this rivalry game that was big for Florida to win, to stay in the top 10 rankings in the country.
Yeah, it makes a big difference when you play your in-state rivals, Big C. Number 10, Baylor, 61-6 over Kansas. And JaMychal Hasty rushed for 3 touchdowns, and Baylor for 6 turnovers. They forced 6 turnovers in a victory over Kansas. Kansas is ready for basketball to start, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a big game for Baylor. Now they get a chance for a rematch against Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, Charlton, where they had a 28-point lead at halftime and let it slip away as Oklahoma miraculously came back, led by quarterback Jalen Hurts. But I don't think that Baylor will take Oklahoma as lightly in the second time around in the Big 12 championship game.
That would be really interesting to see if Baylor gets a win and in front of a sold-out crowd, if they'll edge Utah and the committee's thoughts for playing in the Final Four. But I think Utah could play with a lot of teams, especially with their defense. Number 13, Wisconsin. Think about what they did, 38-17 over number 9, Minnesota. And Jay Colton delivered 2 momentum-shifting touchdown passes in the snow. Wisconsin's Jonathan Taylor, I love the way he runs the ball. 3 touchdowns to his FBS leading total. And then the Badgers forcefully repossessed Paul Bunyan's axe. They got the axe from Paul Bunyan, Big C. That's not nice, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's what they fight for in that rivalry, Charlton. It's been the trophy that they've had for decades between those 2 great schools. But the only unfortunate thing for Wisconsin is that they have to go see Ohio State again next week, Charlton, that they lost by 38 points to earlier in the season.
Maybe they'll lose by 30 points this time, Big C. Number 12, Penn State, 27-6 over Rutgers. Rutgers getting another coach. I think Schiano's going back there to coach the Scarlet Knights, Big C. They should have always stayed in that Big East or try to get into the ACC. They're not a good team for the Big Ten, in my opinion. Then you have Journey Brown ran for 103 yards and 3 touchdowns. Penn State pulled away from Rutgers, as a lot of people pulled away from Rutgers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Rutgers was just happy to end the season, and Penn State will be looking for a top-flight bowl to get into.
Yeah, they may just get it. Number 14, Oregon. The Ducks, they started quacking again. They beat Oregon State, in-state rival, 24-10. Justin Herbert threw 174 yards and a touchdown in his final at Austin Stadium. If they're nice, it's nice to be nice to your neighbors, Big Z. The Pac-12 will tell the people at Oregon, just play the way you played against Arizona State and don't play any defense, so we could have at least the conversation of getting a Pac-12 team into the Final Four. But will they listen, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's going to be quite interesting, this game between Utah and Oregon, Charlton. When you look at players go to school for at least athletes.
Yeah.
The first thing they want to do is win a conference championship ring, Charlton. That's what the players want. That's what the pride in the players. That's the thing that you're going to remember and have the rest of your life. Not about somebody getting into the college football playoffs, because there's no guarantee of a championship. And I think Oregon will come out with a lot of fire against Utah.
You've heard of home cooking, right, Big C? Utah will win that game. That's why I'm thinking. Number 15, Notre Dame, 45, Stanford, 24, Ian Book, threw for 255 yards. He's actually out of Oak Ridge High School in Northern California. And 4 touchdowns. Notre Dame reached double-digit wins for the 3rd straight season under Kelly, who was also on the hot seat a couple of seasons ago. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, but he's kept that program solid with double-digit wins, Charlton, over the last 3 seasons. Stanford had a really down, dismal year, a lot of injuries with Coach David Shaw out there, Charlton. And they're hoping that they can have a rebuild next year.
And thinking of rebuilding, number 17, Iowa, 27-24 over Nebraska with a field goal kick to win that game. Keith Duncan kicked a 48-yard field goal. 1 second left, giving Iowa a 27-24 victory over Scott Frost and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And the loss leads the Cornhuskers out of the postseason for the 3rd consecutive season. Even if they could smell Tom Osborne's aftershave, Big C, with all the success he had there, it's uncalled for a program like Nebraska to not have playoffs or at least be in a bowl game. What's going wrong with Nebraska, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, just like we talked about earlier, when you watch that game between Auburn and Alabama, if you're a top-flight recruit, where would you want to go to school at? And when you look at the depth that those programs have in the SEC, Charlton, because when they're on television, they are highlight games. You go out to Nebraska, it's cold, it's windy, there's no attractions, and you don't have anything but football. And everybody, Charlton, wants to go to a winning program. They don't want to rebuild a program now.
Yeah, I really remember the days I would get up early just to watch the Nebraska and Oklahoma game, because that was always to decide who won that championship when they played back in the Big 8. And that program is going south, while Oklahoma's going north rankings-wise. Number 18, Memphis, 34-24 over number 19, Cincinnati. Brady White threw for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Memphis beat Cincinnati Friday for the 3rd straight American Athletic Conference title. Big C, your thoughts?
And ironically, they have to face each other for the conference championship game, Charlton, next week. But when you think about those 2 head coaches at those programs, they may not be around next year, moving on to larger programs.
They may move on to larger programs. Number 20, Boise State, 31-24 over Colorado State. Jalen Henderson accounted for 3 scores. Defensive tackle David Moore came up with a big late sack, and Boise State beat Colorado State to finish undefeated in the Mountain West Conference for the first time. Big C, your thoughts?
It's something about this Boise State program. You think about Henderson. He's the backup quarterback. They lost their starter 4 weeks ago, the true freshman, to a knee injury. But Henderson stepped in as a backup quarterback, Charlton, sophomore, and led this team to the conference championship. You think about it, the first time they ever won the conference championship being undefeated.
Yeah, that program has been the staple of the West Coast. Big C, 2 more in the world of college football before the Big C timeout. Virginia, 39, number 24, Virginia Tech, 30. And Brian Delaney kicked a 48-yard field goal with 1:23 to play. That put Virginia ahead, and the Cavaliers sealed it with a defensive score. And they beat the number 23 Virginia Tech. They ended a 15-game losing streak in that rivalry, and they earned their first trip to the ACC championship game. And they might want to give that to somebody else because they realize Clemson's waiting for them. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be a short-lived celebration in Blacksburg, for Tennessee walking out of town, Charlton, with that first victory over Virginia Tech. Now they got to go down to Carolina, Charlton, and play those mighty Clemson Tigers, who have not lost a game in 27 runs out onto the field, Charlton. So, I mean, you enjoy the victory of beating somebody to just stop a 15-game skid. But can you stop a 27-game win streak?
Yeah, probably not. You ever get a gift and you say, "Well, I don't want the gift. I want to give it back for something else." They may not want that championship game with Clemson Big C, but we'll see. Number 25, Appalachian State 48, Troy 13. Zach Thomas passed for 326 yards and 4 touchdowns and rushed for a 5th score to lead Appalachian State to a romp over Troy. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Appalachian State just like Boise State, Charlton. These used to be 1AA programs. Now they rank in the top 25 in major college football.
It's amazing how these teams, they just keep building. And, money makes a lot of things happen. You can build a lot when you have the money, and the programs have it definitely. We always look forward to talking about college football. Really excited about what's going to happen in the world of college football and who's going to be ranked where. Someone's going to get left behind, but that's how it goes in Love and War. We'll take the Big C timeout. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors that are on podcast and TV. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Before we start crowning, like the late Dennis Green said, you want to crown him, crown him. So I want to get your thoughts on what many people are saying is going to be a Super Bowl matchup, and nobody knows because it just depends. A bad kick here, a bad call there, a fumble here. You just never know. But the Ravens and the 49ers, if you like defense that can shut down an offense, you saw it yesterday at Big C. Just give me your feeling. Are these two Super Bowl ready programs, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, every team that makes the playoff, Charlton, is a Super Bowl ready program. This was a game that I thought it went the way I thought that it would. That it would be a defensive battle. Everyone talked about the electricity of the offense, and I said that the defensive lines on both sides would step up in this game as they did. Lamar Jackson was held in check to a degree because he only had 105 yards passing, even though Jimmy Garoppolo didn't do much better from the quarterback position. This game was about running. When you look at the 49ers, their running attack as well as the Ravens' running attack. Both of these teams are set up to play football this time of the year in inclement weather. But you can't discount the rest of the teams that are going to be in the playoffs. I mean, it was an exciting game. It was almost as good as advertised for the NFL. Came down to the last minute with the field goal, Charlton, and this kicker's made 38 consecutive field goals on the line in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. So I know we talked about the Thanksgiving games, and it was Chicago 24, Detroit 20. Buffalo with a 26-15 win over Dallas. New Orleans with a 26-18 win over Atlanta, and they've won the NFC South with that win. And then Sunday's games, talking about Baltimore 20, San Francisco 17. There's something about that field. At one time, from the look of it, Big C, this just shows you how good NFL fields are. I thought they were playing on synthetic turf, but actually, watching the game and hearing people talk about it, it's actually a grass surface, and it actually held up quite well. But I want to get your thoughts. Is it safer to play on grass where guys can slip and can lose footing, or is it actually safer playing on the synthetic turf because it doesn't come apart and cause people to pull muscles, etc.? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they both have their plus and minuses about them. It comes down to footwear. It's not about the surface that you're playing on. It's the footwear that you're on when you're playing that makes a difference when you're an athlete.
Yeah, I thought there was a couple of plays where Lamar Jackson was a lot like Barry Sanders. I know he went to the one play option pass that he had. He kept the ball. He faked it to the tailback. Bosa went after the tailback and tackled him. And then, Jackson pulls the ball down. And as he got on the outside containment, he faked out number 24. I can't remember his name. But that one fake caused not only number 24 to hit the ground, it caused Bosa to be slowed up because he tried to jump over the guy that number 24 fell in front of. And then Jackson picked him about 7 or 8 yards on that play. Most quarterbacks would have been hit for a loss, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, most quarterbacks are not Lamar Jackson. I mean, what we see in Lamar Jackson is phenomenal, but it's not the first time that we've seen it in the NFL. Everybody's all excited about what he brings to the table, but we've seen this run before, Charlton. Many quarterbacks have done it. You can go back and watch some tape on Doug Flutie when in his days with the Chargers and the Buffalo Bills, the same type of action that Lamar Jackson had, Charlton. He actually got benched because he was that type of a quarterback. We saw with Randall Cunningham early in his career. We saw with Michael Vick. We've seen him do these same type of accolades, as well as Colin Kaepernick. Marlon Briscoe did it years ago when you were a baby back with the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see, Big C. I don't think anyone's had his kind of speed doing it. So congratulations. That was just a great win by Baltimore. But also for the 49ers to go across the country and play an early game, it shows you that they can go anywhere. And Garoppolo, he had the fumble that led to a score in their own territory. That led to a score for Baltimore. So it seems like, and this is just my opinion from watching, and I know Booger McFarland talked about it before, and I heard some of the Bay Area media saying, yeah, what about that play, McFarland? Well, Garoppolo, if he doesn't throw an interception, he fumbles in the big games. That's just what people have said, and I've noticed that too. I know they have a winning record because of their defense, but if you were to take Jackson off of that team, there's no way Baltimore wins. You could take Garoppolo off, and the 49ers will still win. They had that when they had Mullen last year, but their defense carries a toll. Big C, would you agree with that or no? Your thoughts?
Well, Jackson laid the ball on the ground also. I mean, intangibles about a football game always differ. You don't know what any player is going to do at any given time. I mean, the 49ers did not have a winning record. When Mullen was a quarterback, basically the defense was the same. They've had some upgrades in their running game that has really helped them. I mean, but each year is different in the NFL.
Yeah.
Everyone will always draw comparisons to another.
Yeah, that's very true, Big C. I do want to say for the 49ers, you've lost 2 games. The quarterbacks that beat you, they had the same skills that Kaepernick had, Russell Wilson and Jackson. They can run and pass, and they're not a liability when you need them to run. I think Garoppolo's rushed for like 46 yards this year on 33 carries or somewhere around that neighborhood, so that's not a threat. I want to go to Green Bay, and they played in the snow. It was actually like Christmas in New York City, Big C, or is it New Jersey? Green Bay 31, the Giants 13, and Discount Double-Check looked himself again, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the Packers felt at home in the snow. They thought they were in Wisconsin when it started snowing in New Jersey. Aaron Rodgers, is not going to have 2 abysmal games in succession, Charlton, and he rebounded well, even though it was against the Giants, and it was a much expected win, Charlton, and they got that win. But those are the games that you're supposed to win when you got a lesser opponent and you come out and dominate.
Just what the doctor ordered, a game against the New York Giants. Tennessee Titans, kind of an upset in my book, 31-17 over Indianapolis. Tennessee is playing much better football, so maybe not an upset after all. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Tennessee in their last 5 games with Ryan Tannehill playing quarterback, Charlton, I think Marcus Mariota, if he has a house in Tennessee, he might want to put it up for sale because he will not be back there next year. They're going to sign Tannehill. He seems to have understood this is his opportunity in the NFL to be with a better team with a lot of talent around him, and he has delivered, Charlton. Not only is he throwing, but he's running the ball equally as well in Tennessee.
When you think about doing things equally as well, I think the Cleveland Brown head coach, his daughter, he threw his daughter under the bus and said, hey, she gave me the shirt that was bulletin board material. I don't think you need bulletin board material. You play for your job. Pittsburgh 20-13 over the Cleveland Browns in a rematch of the fiasco we had a couple of weeks ago. And I'm just going to say that Mike Tomlin should at least be in mention for Coach of the Year. Here's a guy that's had 3 different quarterbacks this season, and he comes out, not that he throws his players under the bus, but they were asking why did you bench his player from last week, Big C? He said he wasn't getting the job done. He was just cut and dry. I think his players respect that, but this is a coach that was on the hot seat. Now they're 7-5 and looking at a solid wild card spot, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he doesn't have the killer bees any longer, Charlton, and so no one can say it's not Mike Tomlin being the guy in the lead in Pittsburgh, where he's always been in control and come under a lot of media fire, Charlton. But as you look at this game, and people want to point a lot of fingers towards Freddie Kitchens, yes, he wore a shirt that was class as far as a head coach goes in the NFL. You leave that kind of crap to the players.
Yeah.
As a coach, you're a professional. You're a businessman. You're the CEO of a company. You don't come in with the childish antics and even saying that your daughter did it, Charlton. But the players in the Cleveland Brown organization, Charlton, are the problem. They're going to fire Freddie Kitchens. You can't fire half the team, which is what they need to do. They need to move on from several of the players from the Cleveland Browns because they're just not in cohesiveness with each other, Charlton. These players will never mesh, because this team should be run through Nick Chubb, the NFL's leading rusher. Instead, they try to make Baker Mayfield the highlight, and there's just too many distractions with the organization.
It's amazing. If you have a solid running game, you're going to do well. I mean, Lamar Jackson, he leads the NFL in rushing at 7.1 yards a carry. And then the guy number 2 is his running back. He leads it at 5.3 yards a carry. They run the ball, and that's why they win. And Chubb is the same kind of running back you have in Baltimore, but the Browns don't recognize that yet. You're right, Big C, about Mayfield. Cincinnati, hey, there's no more undefeated teams, and there's no more winless teams. Cincinnati with the big win over the New York Jets, 22-6. Say it ain't so, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Zach Brown found a way to get off the snide, Charlton, and get rid of that goose egg that he had.
Yeah.
And for the Jets, Charlton, just as you thought they had it figured out, averaging 34 points a game over the last three games, I guess they have to do no further than look at the emblem on the side of the helmet. JETS. Just end the season soon.
Yeah, well, they're trying to end it soon, Big Z. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 28-11 over Jacksonville, another in-state rival. In Tampa Bay, there's times when they look like they could have contended for the NFC South, and other times they don't look like it. But a win is a win, and they'll take it. 17-point win, nothing too bad to write home about, Big C. Your thoughts?
No, it's not. And they're on a 2-game winning streak. Jameis Winston, found a way not to have a lot of turnovers in this game, Charlton. And when he's not turning the ball over, Tampa Bay is one of the most electrifying offenses in the NFL. And Nick Foles found out he wasn't with the Eagles any longer, Charlton, and he's gotten benched again.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's all fair and love and war. The Miami Dolphins, 37-31 over the Philadelphia Eagles. And Carson Wentz, obviously there were people saying that he's going to have an MVP caliber season, that he would be one of the top quarterbacks. I'm not knocking him. It's their team. He doesn't play defense, but he's also not as accurate as he could be for the kind of money they gave him. And Miami came from behind at home, showed a lot of moxie to walk out of there with a 37-31 win, and they almost got beaten by Hail Mary. Pixie, your thoughts?
Well, teams that come from the Northeast and come down to Miami this time of the year, Charlton, find themselves playing in a lot of heat that they're not accustomed to at home. And I think Philadelphia got a little tired by halftime and also had mailed it in, saying, Miami wasn't going to fight. But there was a lot of dog in those Dolphins down there, Charlton, and they pawed their way back in this game and took the lead against the Eagles. And you have to question, the mindset of Carson Wentz. He's gotten a big contract at the beginning of the season. He doesn't have Nick Foles looking over his shoulder, so maybe he got a little too lax in this Eagle organization. And then I look at the coach, Doug Peterson. He's been cocky ever since he's won the Super Bowl, and things just haven't gone his way.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much talk early in the year, fire the Miami Dolphins head coach. He came out of New England, out on the Belichick's wing, and they gave him a chance. And it's going to take a year or two, maybe 2 years to 3 years to build a winning organization. And when you beat a coach who just won a Super Bowl not many moons ago, congratulations to the Miami Dolphins and their young organization. Washington Redskins, say it ain't so. There were people saying that Haskins shouldn't play. He's a rookie. You were saying start him. You can make your mistakes now, but you'll get better for next year. The Washington Redskins, 29-21 over the Carolina Panthers, who since losing that game at San Francisco, they were blown out in San Francisco, and then they went and played it, and they lost with a goal line stand at Green Bay. This team hasn't played like they have the energy, and I want to get your feeling if that makes any sense. Your thoughts?
Well, they've lost 3 consecutive games, actually 4 consecutive games, Charlton, when you talk about the San Francisco, the Atlanta, the Green Bay, and now this game here against the Redskins, Charlton. Dwayne Haskins needed an opportunity to learn under fire, and that's what he's been doing the last 2 weeks. Not only that, their running game just dominated the Carolina Panthers. They had no answer. You had two running backs, Charlton, that amassed basically 100 yards on the ground. Guys had over 130 yards on the ground. Adrian Peterson had 99 yards on the ground. And so this Carolina team, where they were talking about moving on from Cam Newton a couple of months ago, and everybody saying Cam, they got a quarterback of the future in Allen, and he's cheap. Well, cheap doesn't always get the bills paid, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so Cam Newton probably was feeling a little more comfortable now that he may still be the quarterback in Carolina next year.
And he probably should be. Injuries should not cost you a job, even though we know it happens in sports. And when I think about Chubb, what you said about him at Cleveland not giving the ball enough because they're trying to showcase Baker Mayfield, I don't think Adrian Peterson could beat Nick Chubb in a foot race. I don't think he could run behind the same offensive line with the same success. But it's amazing how a guy that's considered washed up over the hill can run the way Peterson's running because they hand it off to him. And then Chubb, I think, is being highly underused in Cleveland. Just something for people to think about, Big C. Does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, he is. He's underutilized. People talked about Christian McCaffrey a lot early in the season being in the MVP chase. Nick Chubb's name has never come up in that, that MVP talk, even though he's the NFL's leading rusher at this point of the season, Charles.
Yeah, he's amazing. Just giving the ball sometime, Big C. So, congratulations, Washington Redskins. L.A. Rams, they found out what winning feels like again, 34-7 over the Dirty Birds from Arizona, over the Arizona Cardinals. And they look like they looked last year when they won the NFC West, but they're not going to win the West this year, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Rams offense came awake. Jared Goff actually came awake in the first half. He had 323 yards passing in the first half. He ended up the game with 424. But that offense was just astonishing for the Rams in this game. Todd Gurley was effective. All the receivers were effective in the game. But the defense looked like the defense of last year, Charlton. Kyler Murray had no answer for that pass rush from the Los Angeles Rams, and the Arizona Cardinals have to look to next year as far as getting him some help on the line.
Definitely. So the Rams, they came out of the abyss, and they found a way to win. Again, it's Arizona. Arizona has 3 wins on the season and even a tie. But a win is a win. I want to take you to something that, to me, is a little bit troubling. When I saw the Oakland Raiders go up to Kansas City and play one of the most fierce rivals, Big C. And I know John Gruden got $100 million. Everybody wants $100 million, and he doesn't care, what happens. But this was a team in the Raiders that was knocking on the door for at least competing in the AFC West, maybe a wild card spot. And no matter what the record looks like now, they're not going to get there. They went across the country. First of all, at home, they played their last home game. They barely beat Cincinnati, which finally got a win, Cincinnati did. They went across the country. They played the New York Jets, and they lost by, I think, 30 points. And now they come back home and they get ready for their biggest rival, I believe, the Kansas City Chiefs. And they go to Kansas City. They didn't even show up. Now, Gruden, he can make all the mean faces on the sidelines, but if he had a different complexion, they would be saying, fire this. In fact, he wouldn't have got $100 million. They would be saying, fire this. He's lost the team. They have no direction. It's like Carr's, just trying not to get hurt so he can go someplace else next year. I've never seen the Raiders play with more lethargy, especially against a team like Kansas City. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Derek Carr is building a house down in Las Vegas. The question is, will he get a chance to live in that house and play in that city, which I don't think he will. John Gruden is looking to move away from Derek Carr. There was some talk about that early in the year. I think when you look at the struggles of the offense, you don't have to look any further than Derek Carr. You got wide open receivers. He seems to lack confidence in the pocket, and I think that the Raiders next year will either end up with Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota as their starting quarterback. I think that's the direction that John Gruden will be looking to go in free agency. When you got the Kansas City Chiefs and you got Patrick Mahomes, he makes your defense look good because he's going to get a lead, Charlton, and then that opposing quarterback has to try to throw the football. You're going to have to abandon your running game. Josh Jacobs had 100 yards in the game at halftime, Charlton, but he couldn't keep up the pace in the second half because they were trailing, and you had to go to passing the football, and Derek Carr just wasn't up to the task.
Big C, just doing some research, I don't think the Raiders have lost back-to-back games by 30 points each. So they've lost their last 2 games by 60 points. 60. That's almost unacceptable for NFL. How does he get away with saying, well, it's his team, it's the quarterback, it's the defense? That's coaching. Bill Belichick's teams would never lose by 60 points in 2 back-to-back games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, but when you have a starting quarterback, there's not many quality backup quarterbacks in the NFL. And when you get away from what you do best, which is run the ball with the Raiders, because you get behind and your quarterback lacks confidence, how do you make up for it? You don't have any receivers on the outside, Charlton, that can really threaten the secondary. So they don't really have that deep threat. Their best passing attack is underneath to the tight ends. And so you're not really going to put a lot of pressure on an opposing defense if you're not ahead.
Yeah, well, I feel bad for the city of Oakland and obviously Las Vegas. You know, you invited them in, so here they come. Big C, the Denver Broncos 23-20 over the LA Chargers in a referee-officiated game. There was a pass interference call at the end, and I know people can say, well, it was or it was not. But that game was about a second from going into overtime, and those good old boy officials up in Denver, they made sure they could kick a field goal. What a garbage call again, Big C. Just my opinion, your thoughts.
Well, it was a tough call at the end of the game, Charlton. And you know, unfortunately, we've seen the referees be the dictator in the outcome of so many games this year, and you question why do you have replay if you're not going to utilize it properly. You knew once the flag was thrown, it wasn't going to be overturned. They've only overturned, I believe, 4 replay interference calls all year long. So the NFL put that rule in just to back away from it, to say they had it in place. But, you know, nevertheless, the interceptions that are thrown, you know, in a game by Phillip Rivers always puts his team in peril. You thought that Denver the Chargers had a chance, but Drew Lock was able to pull it out for his first home win for the Broncos.
Yeah, what an egregious play, but that's why they played the game. That's why they played the game, Big C. The New England Patriots looked a little bit human last night, where they fell 28-22 at Houston. What an amazing crowd down there at NRG Stadium. Them good old boys in Houston. They had the barbecue smoke going, and they were barbecuing fried turkeys, Big C, frying and barbecuing turkeys. And then they put Tom Brady on a stick. Now, he may be the GOAT, but there are so many times when he throws bad passes too. He doesn't have the velocity on the ball that he had 3 years ago. They can always blame the receivers for not getting open. But there are times when Tom Brady should yell at the mirror and not have offensive coordinator, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Well, but also you got to look at those receivers. They're not fighting hard to get open. Who do you know that's a receiver on the New England Patriots that have any speed? They bottle up Philip Dorsett, who is actually their fastest receiver, but he's smallish in size, so they can physically control him off the line of scrimmage. You know, if you double up Edelman, the other guys don't have enough moxie to break themselves open. Their tight ends have really not been a threat all year long. They have not been able to throw the seam routes like they used to do with Gronk.
Yeah.
Yes, Brady's gotten a little long in the tooth, but you got to look at that offense. Sonny Michel averaging 2.6 yards a carry. He's not putting any threat on the defense, so the linebackers don't have to just sit up in the hole, Charlton, waiting on him. Brady still can throw the ball. He has command and know where players should be. You got to look at the intelligence of him and the knowledge of what he possesses offensively. If you follow his tutelage, you can be successful. He's not going to put you in a bad situation.
Yeah.
It's just the players are not fighting as hard as he is fighting to get to that point, even though New England is still 10-2 on the year.
Yeah. Not bad when you're 10-2 and upset at your progress on your team. They'll probably bring a receiver someplace. I know there's someone around New England that can catch a football, Big C. So now we go to tonight's big Monday Night Football game. Has so many implications. Up in the great Northwest, one of the greatest places to watch a football game. And Monday Night Football matchup, Minnesota Vikings. They're 8-3. They're at the Seattle Seahawks that are 9-2. And these teams are trying to claw their way to the top of their division. A Seattle win tonight makes them the top seed in the NFC standings so far. They know the Niners have to go down to New Orleans. In fact, they're practicing at IMG Academy down in Florida. When an NFL team can find a high school academy that has good enough facilities, Big C, that says something about that high school. Give me your thought on what may happen for these teams to win tonight up in Seattle. Your thoughts?
Well, I think this game comes down between the NFL's number 7 leading rusher and Dalvin Cook, and number 8 leading rusher and Chris Carson for Seattle. this is a game of two powerful defensive lines, and who's going to impose their will tonight. But as much as we talk about these quarterbacks and your cousin in Minnesota never winning a big-time game, Charlton, I think this game is for Minnesota to have tonight. They've been dominant on the road. Seattle has struggled at home this year. They've had to pull out a couple close ones. But when you think about Kirk Cousins, he hasn't thrown an interception in his last 177 passes.
Yep.
Russell Wilson got picked off last week in Philadelphia, Charlton. He's been under a lot of pressure. I know he has to use his legs, but this Viking defense is going to be a formidable challenge for him tonight.
I want to get a feeling with Seattle. I know the only losses they've had have been up there at Seattle. They lost to New Orleans, and they also lost to the Baltimore Ravens, and you can see why, because they had, number one, Bridgewater's mobile quarterback. Also, when you look at Jackson, mobile quarterback. Kirk Cousins is not mobile, so if there's anything the Seattle can do, they can get pressure on Cousins, and he can't run like Bridgewater and like Jackson did, so that helps Seattle. And then Russell Wilson, if it comes down to needing to drive, I have more faith in him than I do in Cousins. But I also want to get your feeling on, do you feel that the defense for the Seattle Seahawks, they're not what they used to be. They're not Legion of Boom. But at home with that crowd, home field gives you like a 3-point advantage, and it looks like they're a better team than 3 points, maybe a 4 or 5 point win. Would you buy that or not? Your thoughts?
Well, this defense may be better than the Legion of Boom when you look at how well they played. They never had the record at this point of the season with the Legion of Boom that they have now, Charlton, with the amount of victories versus losses. So as you look as Seattle goes, they played a lot of tight games. I mean, they've been single-digit victories every game that they've had. It's been a one-score win that they've had in every game this year. So this is a team that's not going to blow anybody out. You got to look at the big play capability of Minnesota with the receiving core that they have, with Thielen and Diggs and the tight end and Rudolph, and also, like I said, the speed of Cook coming out of the backfield, whether it's on the run or on the swing pass. Seattle is a team that, they got to hope that they don't get dinged up anymore. Javavian Clowney was dinged up, with a hip problem coming into this game.
Yeah.
Will they have the pass rush to get on your cousin in Minnesota tonight?
He's not my cousin without love his bank account. I think $84 million, I'd take it. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. But the apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors on podcast and TV. And you'll hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate where Big C Sports is growing. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I want to run down, before we close off today, Big C, before that tryptophan sets in from Thanksgiving dinner, the leaders in the NFL, AFC East, New England, now 10-2, followed by Buffalo, 9-3. In the South, the AFC South, Houston's 8-4, followed by Tennessee, 7-5. In the North, Baltimore is 10-2, followed by Pittsburgh, 7-5. Baltimore now has the #1 seed in the AFC. In the West, Kansas City Chiefs, 8-4, followed by the Raiders, 6-6. Big C, give me your feeling on the AFC, the top two teams that you would expect, just based on now we know things can change. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, right now you're still looking at New England and Baltimore with equal records at 10-2, Charlton. Yes, New England has lost 2 games, and everybody keeps writing them off, but year after year, Charlton, you got to see what's going on in January when it comes to New England.
That makes a lot of sense. In the NFC, in the East, #1, Dallas, 6-6, Philadelphia, 5-7. NFC South, New Orleans, 10-2, Tampa Bay, 5-7. New Orleans is close to the South. In the NFC North, Green Bay, 9-3, Minnesota's 8-3. And in the NFC West, San Francisco 49ers 10-2 and Seattle 9-2 so far. Your thoughts on the top two teams in the NFC, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the top two teams in the NFC where they stand right now are San Francisco and New Orleans. I like where the Saints are, Charlton. They seem to be getting back in stride after that tough loss against Atlanta at home a couple of weeks ago, Charlton. They went into Atlanta on Turkey Day and dominated them. They left with just a few feathers left out on the field. But the New Orleans Saints are the team that are on a mission after last year's season.
That's funny. I was watching the program when the 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens, and some good old boys that put some sweaters on Ravens. I said maybe that's CGI or someone really did put some sweaters on some Ravens. Big C, I thought it was very cute. Tonight's Big C's NBA action. Phoenix Suns at the Charlotte. Utah is at Philadelphia. Should be a big game there. Golden State at Atlanta. Indiana at Memphis. New York at Milwaukee. And Chicago at Sacramento. Big C, last night the Clippers scored 150 points to 125 over Washington. 150 in one game, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they might want to save some of that as the season gets long, Charlton, and people start taking that workload time out.
Yep, they do have to save some they call save it, some gas in the tank, if that makes any sense. You can follow Big C Sports all over the universe as we love wishing everybody happy holiday season on a great December that we hope that everybody would be healthy, wealthy, and wise. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, we're about 3 weeks away from Christmas, and the NBA will come into full swing at that time. You have to ask the Los Angeles Lakers what they think about Luka Doncic last night.
Luka Doncic was doing his thing last night, and you can do your thing too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.